Heroic Tales is the first comic from Longbox Comics. Of course, Longbox Comics is John Longbox's comic imprint, his independent publishing brand. And I have to say, for a first comic from a new imprint, this is a really impressive effort. This is a high quality printing. Of course, it is just a floppy, but still, it's got a nice feel in the hand. Paper is really nice. This is a really good book, and of course it was packaged well, and it came in a very timely manner from when I ordered it to when I got it. So I have to say hats off to John for making the experience a really good one and really building a lot of goodwill with Longbox Comics, because a lot of the word of mouth for this comic book is positive, and I think it absolutely is warranted. So Heroic Tales is two stories. So we see here, I can zoom in just a little bit. So you see there's two stories for this. John wrote both of them. The first one is Father's Day. That's the head story. And then the suit, I would say, is the backup story. And both of them are pretty good. But the main focus, we'll zoom back out, for this story of Heroic Tales is the patriarch story. This is Father's Day. This is a really good story. It's, of course, it's basically half of a floppy. It's probably about 20 pages of story or so. And this is a good story. This is basically an introduction to the patriarch, as we can see. And Reno Rodriguez is done the art for this. And this all is really good. It holds up quite well. It's basically a day in the life of the patriarch as a hero. And throughout this pretty hectic day of his life, you get a good introduction to the character himself, the world that he inhabits, and this is a really good foundation for the superhero universe that John wants to build, with the patriarch being featured in it. So this is definitely, I would say, a good comic, just good comic story, classic superhero action. A lot of John's inspiration comes from those really classic comics of the 70s, the 80s, and the early 90s. And I absolutely have to say, I love, we'll zoom in here again. I love the Patriarch's character design. You've got the purple, you've got the reef. It's very much got a lot of Roman motifs in it. And even in this background art, you see like a Colossus looking statue. So this is a really nice character. He's, lives on a farm, has a bunch of kids. So he's definitely going to be exemplifying standard, like masculine, traditional values. And of course, he's also a superhero while he's at it. So it's a really interesting premise. There's definitely a lot to this world that John is building with this first issue. So I'm really excited to see how the story develops. And I think with everything here, there's definitely a lot to develop. It's just that, a lot gets thrown at you. The pacing's pretty fast. I think you can wrap your head around all of it, but it's definitely something that needs to get developed and fleshed out in further issues. And of course, I think this character is good enough that if, he can get his own like full-length graphic novels, 50 to 96 pages of stories featuring just the patriarch or characters within this universe that's being built, I think that would be a really good thing. But we're going to move on to the next story, because I don't want to spoil too much of this. But before we get on to the next story here, I definitely want to shout out. So we've got the last, or basically the division between these two stories, and you've got this cute little ad here. You've got this Madhouse ad back here. So there's definitely a lot of homage to classic comic books, and you can definitely tell that's the that's what drives him. That's the reason why he even started Longbox Comics. So it's nice to see that personality shine through in this book. But the second story is The Suit, and this is a shorter story, and I don't try not to spoil things here or get too deep into the weeds of either of these stories. I think you definitely should pick up this book. It's a really good book. But The Suit is basically a guy goes on a job interview. It's going to be disastrous, but he finds a suit and it saves the day. And this is it's an interesting story. I like the premise of it. I think the script is a little bit weak, especially at the end. I've said this in the written review, if you read that, of this. that this would really work as a 50 or so page graphic novel where you get to fully flesh out the story of this. And I think based on what I have here, it's warranted. And the art is honestly really good. So both of these styles are different. They're unique between Father's Day and The Suit, but they meld with each other. So you go from reading Father's Day, you read The Suit, and there's definitely a bit of a transition there because they're different stories. But everything melds, and it really is a nice reading experience. So hats off to all the creatives for managing to pull that off. That was a really good thing. Of course, John wrote both of these stories. I think he did a good job with this. I think the ending of this, like I said, is definitely a little weak. Definitely need to establish why that ending event is why it went down the way that it did. So it leaves the ending a little bit anticlimactic. There's definitely a lot more involved with the plot point set up in this story that, like I said, if this was a 50-page or so graphic novel, you would really be able to expand on that and tell a complete story. So I think, if John can get the creatives who worked on this, the line artist and the colorist, to finish this story. Of course, he writes down the story, but you had Ron Masiki and Oscar Carreno doing the black and white art and the color art for The Suit. Get them back together, give them a full script to work with. Like I said, 50 or so pages where you really expand this story idea. And I think that's the best thing you could possibly do. I don't think there's enough here to make it an ongoing series or part of a big universe or anything like that. But I definitely think it should be its own complete story. And if this slots in with the world that's being built in the Patriarch, that's even better. But I think this should be its own full-on story about 50 to 100 pages or so, like a big meaty graphic novel. And that's really where I think The Suit would shine and actually be a good story. Because what's here is intriguing, it's interesting, but it's definitely not enough for me to say it's like really good or really eye-dropping. But it is the backup story for Father's Day, the Patriarch story. And I definitely, don't think that, the fact that the Patriarch is, one of two in heroic tales, that this makes it, it cheapens the value of his character or makes it anything lesser. Remember, Action Comics and Detective Comics were basically anthology comic books, and those were where Superman and Batman first appeared, respectively. And I'm not saying the Patriarch is going to be as legendary as those characters, but he's definitely got a lot of intrigue. He's got a lot of interest, and the word of mouth surrounding the book he first appears in is definitely really positive, and I'm here to affirm that. Honestly, I have to say, here's this back cover. This was a piece of art that the fans really loved when John was promoting this. I do too. So much so that you could even buy this as a cover during the campaign run. I'm not sure if you can still get that, but this is just a really good piece of art. It really exemplifies the what the Patriarch stands for, and I think why John is writing a character like him. So I am really intrigued to see where he goes, where John takes his character, how John builds this world, because he's talked about it a good bit on his live streams, and he's definitely fought this out, and he has these arcs not only for the Patriarch but for multiple characters in this world, and to see how it unfolds is going to be a really interesting thing. And I think it's something I'm definitely going to follow up on, and I think it's definitely something you should follow up on as well if you're at all into comic books. And if you're watching this video, decent chance you are. So I'll have John's Twitter linked below. I'll have the link to where you can get in on this book. So hopefully you do. This is a really good book. It's a really good first showing from a new imprint as well. Definitely just in terms of how quick it was delivered, the quality of the art, and of course the quality of the book itself. It's nice paper, the cover feels nice, and of course since it's a floppy, it is stapled, so it's going to not close the best, but still it's a nice book to hold, it's a nice book to read, and both of the stories are really nice. Of course, Father's Day is definitely the one that's better, more intriguing, and structured better. And The Suit is a little bit of a weaker story that would have benefited from being its own full length story, like I said, a 50-page graphic novel. If you revisit, if John, you are watching this and you revisit The Suit, that's how I would recommend doing it. Make it a 50-page or so graphic novel. Really flesh out that script, and I think that's where that story will shine. I think that's what'll be the best response, from the fans. But that's just my opinion, and that is my review of this book. Like I said, it's a really good book. I really like it, and for a $10 or so floppy with 2 stories in it, I don't think you can ask for much more. And I definitely think that John from John's Long Box and Long Box Comics is definitely an imprint that has its priorities straight. I think John really knows what he's doing with the amount of comic books that he has and what's inspiring him to make his own comics. I definitely think that inspiration is genuine. It comes from the right place, and more importantly, he's channeling it correctly, and he's working with the right people. So, stay tuned for more from Long Box Comics, of course, Velvet Room Publishing as well. But I don't have anything more to say. My reviews are always super rambly, but hopefully you got some useful information out of that. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you read Heroic Tales, hopefully you enjoyed that too. But Joker is out.